This is Gary Attention with CNTV, and today we're in South Africa, introducing a man who is redefining the mechanics of breakthrough thinking. He is a global speaker, a master leadership coach, and the architect of a framework that is bridging the gap between corporate strategy and raw human imagination. I am here with the founder of the Innotivity movement, Michael Brian Lee. Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Gary.
I'm going to start off a little bit about yourself. Michael, you've coined the term innotivity. I mean, it's a fusion of innovation and creativity. Many see innovation as a kind of a rigid corporate process and creativity as an artistic one. Why is it a game changer to not keep those two concepts really in separation?
That's a great question. They're really the same thing. Creativity is thinking differently, not just than others, but than yourself, right? Because if you try to solve problems and you get stuck in not solving the problem, you want to be thinking differently than you usually think to solve the problem. And innovation really is just acting differently than yourself, and it is the result of creativity. So creativity is how you think. Innovation is simply how you act. And by the way, adaptability, another element of that, is how you are, how you be. So those three elements are the important cycle of creating something new. You adapt by shifting who you're being, you create by shifting how you're thinking, and then you innovate by shifting what you do.
Interesting. You have a signature framework. I believe it's called the Innotivity Map. For a CEO who feels like their company maybe is sailing in circles, does this map kind of help them identify their true north and find the gaps in their current market strategy?
Yeah, I mean, basically, again, it's really about the way we think, because what stops us from getting the answers when we're stuck and trying to innovate is that it's usually us that's in the way, right? And we have to shift who we're being in order to shift that. So when you're with a team in a corporate situation, you're really dealing with a bunch of robots who programmed themselves many, many years ago, and they're not programmed to work together. So we have to start by reprogramming each of the individuals in the team to get the team to work together better. So in order to remap that, you have to map each individual and map the team together. It really takes a lot of focus on the actual real human beings. Systems don't solve the problem. You have to really focus on the humans.
I mean, you often speak about the dangers of the status quo. In your experience working with high-level executives, why is the way we've always done it the most expensive sentence probably in business today?
Yeah, the way we've always done it is not the way we should be doing it. I mean, it's kind of obvious, right? If you look at the way things are when they're done in a breakthrough way, it's never done the way it was. If we do it the way it was done before, we're not going to have a breakthrough. We're not going to find better ways of doing things. We're not going to have results that are coming from a new direction. We're going to simply have the same results we had before, which is fine if that's what you want. But like you said, it ends up being kind of expensive that way because you're ending up paying the bills of the past instead of paying reaping the benefits and dividends of the future.
You work in high stakes environments where the pressure to perform really is constant. What is the biggest creativity killer that you see in high pressure boardrooms? And do you help leaders kind of clear that mental fog?
Well, it's funny, you've kind of answered the question yourself, right? The biggest killer of creativity is the pressure to perform, because if you're not allowed to fail, then you're not going to really come up with the best and most interesting ideas. The most creative companies are the ones that actually encourage failure. There's like a real methodology to it, that you actually want things to fail. If you don't fail enough, then you're making a mistake already. It's the pressure to actually try to succeed all the time that causes innovation to fail.
So that high pressure cooker, that environment really is the problem to creativity. Your innovation coaching isn't just about business tactic, it's about transformation, really. When you're working with, one-on-one with a leader, do you help them identify the internal, maybe blind spots that are preventing their external growth? I imagine as an outsider, you can see things what many of us cannot.
Absolutely, Gary. What happens is we spend our entire lives, right? We go to school and school teaches us not to take risks. We enter into society, society teaches us not to take risks. But besides school and society, the biggest challenge is actually ourselves. because we are taught by ourselves that we are a certain way. We have a certain personality, a persona that we become. And in becoming that person, we sort of exclude every other possibility of who we could be. And this applies to, most leaders as well. They've become a certain way. They've learned that that's the way to be, and they have a hard time adapting to shift to meet the needs of each given situation. So what we really encourage a leader to do is to try to adapt to the situation and not to have a specific style that they always bring to things. Rather try to be flexible, fluid, and change based on what they're facing.
So we are our own worst enemies many times. I mean, we've all heard the phrase, think outside the box. You argue that we should be looking at the box itself differently. Can you kind of explain your philosophy on how to reshape the constraints that we operate within?
Sure. That's also a great question, because what happens is we talk about thinking outside of the box, but in reality, the only thing we do better than be creative naturally, which because we're all very creative naturally, but we're also very judgmental. And we love to, come up with decisions and judgments about the situation we're in. Probably in the time frame that we've been doing this interview in just those couple of minutes, the person watching this interview right now, you watching this interview, have made several judgments about myself, about Gary, about the framing of the camera, all kinds of judgments you're making all the time, dozens, if not hundreds and hundreds of times every day. So to say you're going to think outside the box is a bit facile, because you can't really think outside of boxes. We think in boxes. That's how we are able to do things in life. If we didn't put things into boxes at the speed of light, right? So rather than trying to think outside the box, what is a better thing to do is to try to shift the boxes we're thinking into, combine boxes, really analyze and understand the boxes we're thinking into instead of trying to ignore them. Because if you ignore them, you're going to actually think right back into them again. The best thing you can do, combine boxes, transform boxes, come up with different boxes, think into different boxes in different ways.
You're right. People are making judgments every minute, every second, constantly. The brain's at work. I mean, you were a teacher, a speaker, a coach, but you were also an author. One of your books, Innotivity, challenges readers to rethink not just how they create, but who they are while creating. I mean, your words argue that we are losing our creative geniuses as we grow into adulthood. So who is to blame, really, would you say?
Well, as I said, people like to blame school and they like to blame society for guiding us to be the same as we're supposed to always have been, right? But I like to point out that it's really ourselves that is at fault, because we like to become a certain persona, a certain personality. And when we become that person, we get stuck there. It's very hard to be flexible and say, I'm proud of who I am. I've spent a lot of time and energy. I don't know how old you are, but I'm 57, and I've spent 57 years becoming Michael Bryan Lee. And, I've got a lot at stake in becoming Michael Bryan Lee. So when I need to be somebody else in order to solve a problem that Michael Bryan Lee does not solve well, because the characteristics of Michael Bryan Lee are not the right ones for that problem, I've got a lot of vested interest in sticking with what I've already invested in myself, instead of actually taking the time to adapt and shift and become who I need to be to solve that problem. And that's really what we need to do is to let ourselves be flexible and adaptable, and not be so stuck on this is who I am and that's how I have to do everything, but rather to let ourselves be flexible and do things differently.
So the key takeaway I see right there is flexible. We need to be flexible to see things in a new way. I mean, you were a #1 best-selling author that has taken the TEDx stage multiple times. As an editor and a writer, why do you find an interest in a wide variety of book projects, would you say?
I'm primarily a writer more than anything else. I've been writing since I was young. I've got a column in the newspaper. I enjoy writing more than I enjoy almost anything else I do. I've written 6 books in the last 2 years. And I have to figure out how to get them all published, because that's much harder than writing them, actually. Publishing books takes a way more work than actually writing them does. That's my little tip for people. If you want to write, it's really much easier than actually getting them out and getting people to read the books, because getting people to read books, especially today, that's the challenge. Writing them is easy.
Too many great writings out there, and I see them never get written. We do our part in the PR because I love getting your stories out there. So let's talk about the book before we let you go. In 1994, you discovered the World Cup, and you have been a fan of competition since. How did the idea for your book, World Innovators Cup, really come about?
I don't actually 100% know. When I was enjoying the previous World Cup in 2022, I had the idea of why don't innovators get the same kind of attention that superstar athletes get? And so I started making these trading cards and posting them on LinkedIn of famous innovators, and as if they were World Cup soccer players. And basically, like, what would happen if these famous innovators had that same kind of attention? And so that was 4 years ago. And in between this World Cup and that World Cup, I started to think, why not make it into an actual book and get innovators to be published in a book where they have the same kind of superstar power as soccer players. So that's what we've done. We've got 56 players in the book from 4 continents, and they are all from history, people that are no longer with us. Great innovators, people like Thomas Edison, people you don't know, like, say, Caldi, the goat herd who discovered coffee. Yeah, I mean, I could list all of them, but that would take us a lot longer than we have. But if you can open that book up, you'll discover not only some interesting things about those innovators, but some interesting stories about some great World Cup games as well.
I think it's a brilliant idea. I'm a guy, I feel kind of weird because I'm not into sports, but I was like, the minute I seen this book, I'm like, now that's a sport that I could get into. And it sounds so captivating. I mean, you've taken history's original thinkers really out of the pages of textbooks and reimagined them as World Cup footballers competing in a game of ideas. I mean, this looks like a lot of fun to read. It's thought provoking. What has been some of the feedback?
People are enjoying it so far. I mean, it's still early days, but so far people like it. They love the idea, and I just really, it is more a lot of fun than anything else. If people can have fun with it, people can discover the Easter eggs inside the sort of secret. I think there's so much information about each of these people that you don't get in the book. You almost have to go out and do more research for yourself to get more information about all of these players. So far the feedback's been great, just like I would like it to be.
I can't wait to see what people are going to think of this. I hope you get it out there in a big way. I think it's really unique. I mean, it's a book about the innovators' minds whose breakthroughs power our lives, our freedoms, and our future. I mean, it is textually and visually captivating. It seems this has a wide market. Who is this a great read for, would you say?
Well, I think a wide market's great. Let's go with everybody. But I think younger people who would like to learn more about the innovators of history are a big part of the market. But also people like ourselves. Gary, I'm gonna guess that we're of a similar kind of age group, and if not, then I'm just gonna guess that anyway. But I think people in their 40s, people in their 50s, people who are just interested in having a good time learning about history. And if they're football fans, great. If they're innovation fans, great. If they're neither, that's good too, because they can learn more about all of those things. So I know it's a terrible answer to say everybody, but in this case, almost everybody. It's definitely not designed for little children, but it is definitely for young people, for older people, for people who are fans of both innovation and football and sports. Everybody will enjoy that.
Sports meets innovation. I love it. I mean, Brian, beyond the books, the TED Talks, the coaching and strategy sessions, what is your ultimate mission for Michael Brian Lee when a client finishes their journey with you?
I want to free people's minds from their own limitations. That's what I really aim to do when I work with an organization. I want every single person in the training that I work with to come out feeling freed and have control over their own creativity. We're all born highly creative. We all lose it. Over 98% of 5-year-old children lose their creativity by the time they grow up. And it's all because of the stuff we've talked about already. My mission is to free people's minds.
Excellent. It's a great story. I'm so happy you sat down with us. Viewers, let's take a look at the bottom of the screen right there. What you're going to see is his website where you can find all his books and see all the services that he provides as well, helping you innovate yourself and your team to restore your natural creative genius, to maximize adaptability and achieve unparalleled success. Once again, that is a creative breakthrough catalyst. Michael Brian Lee. This is Gary Attention with CNTV, and if you don't know, now you know.